I never thought I'd be the kind of person to write one of these stories. You always read about people getting cheated on, lied to, left behind, and you think, that could never be me. My life was stable. I was engaged to a man I genuinely loved, Mark. We'd been together for 6 years. High school sweethearts turned adults building a life together. We had a shared apartment, a cat named Luna, and a wedding date set for the fall. He made me laugh when no one else could, held me through every breakdown, and even supported me when I lost my job last year. If someone asked me what love looked like, I'd have pointed straight to him. My best friend, Kayla, was like my second half. We met in college, instantly clicked, and had been inseparable ever since. She was the first one I told when Mark proposed. She cried, hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe, and said she couldn't wait to be my maid of honor. She was always around, always involved. She helped pick my dress. We planned the bachelorette party together. She knew everything about Mark, and she knew everything about me. Mark and Kayla got along well. Maybe too well, in hindsight. But at the time, it felt like a blessing. Not many people are lucky enough to have their partner and best friend get along. They shared jokes, sent each other memes, sometimes texted when planning surprises for me. I noticed that. I told myself it was sweet. Trust is the foundation of everything, right? The first weird thing happened on a Thursday. Mark was on his phone, smiling at a message. I glanced over, just curious. He tilted the screen away. It was so casual, so smooth, that I almost didn't catch it. But it sat with me. A flicker of something I couldn't name. Later that night, when I asked him what he was smiling at, he said it was a meme from his coworker, Jake. I laughed and moved on. A week later, I asked Kayla to hang out. She said she wasn't feeling well. But that evening, Mark came home smelling like her perfume. Asked if he'd seen her. He blinked, then shook his head. No, not today. He said it fast, too fast. My stomach dropped. Still, I didn't push. Instead, I went into full denial. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was stress from wedding planning. I started listing all the reasons they wouldn't do that to me. Mark loved me. Kayla had seen me at my worst and held my hair back when I cried over my exes. She called Mark her brother-in-law before we were even engaged. But something had changed. The inside jokes became less funny to me. They had moments of silence between them that felt loaded. I'd walk into a room and they'd stop talking. I'd see a flash of panic in her eyes. In his. I told myself I was going crazy. I even brought it up to my therapist, who told me that sometimes people project their insecurities. So I swallowed my doubt and made myself smaller, more agreeable, more understanding. Then came the night we all had drinks at our place. Just the three of us. Mark went to the kitchen to make more cocktails. Kayla got a call and excused herself to the balcony. I followed a minute later to grab my charger. That's when I saw her through the window, talking on the phone, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a while. She said his name. Mark's name. I froze. I didn't confront her. Not then. I couldn't. Instead, I went back inside and tried to act normal, heart racing like I'd run a marathon. That night, when they both left, Mark to go walk Kayla to her car, I waited by the peephole. They didn't kiss, but they hugged. Way too long. Way too tight. I started checking his phone. I know. But at that point, my gut was screaming at me. He had no password. That part made it worse, like he trusted me enough to give me nothing, and yet everything was right there. Messages with Kayla, some deleted, others vague. Same time. Can't stop thinking about last time. I wish things were different. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling while he snored beside me, dreaming whatever dreams cheaters dream when they think they've gotten away with it. I couldn't confront him yet. I needed more. I took screenshots, sent them to myself. I started checking Kayla's Instagram stories obsessively. Watched for overlaps. Same mug, same view, same songs playing in the background when they weren't together. I became a detective in my own relationship, and every piece of evidence felt like a punch to the chest. The worst part? I still loved him. I still remembered how he looked at me when I wore my dress for the first time. How he told me I was the only person who ever made him feel seen. I still remembered every small kindness. And I hated myself for it. One afternoon, while he was in the shower, a message popped up. It was Kayla. No nickname, just her name, plain and bold. I opened it. Still on for tomorrow? I can't wait. I miss you. I took a deep breath, walked out of the apartment, and sat in my car for 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in silence, trying to decide what hurt more, losing my fiancé, or losing the person I thought was my best friend. That night, I acted normal. I smiled, asked him about work, kissed him goodnight. And then I stared at the ceiling again until morning. I didn't know it yet, but my life was already split in two. The one I had before that text, and the one I'd have after I finally said the words out loud. I started collecting proof. Not because I didn't believe what I saw, but because I needed something solid to confront him. Something he couldn't twist or deny. Every message I screenshotted, every overlapping timestamp, every suspicious call log, I saved it all. I created a folder on a hidden drive labeled Work Docs. Inside was the slow disintegration of my relationship. The next time Kayla texted me to cancel plans, I didn't respond. I waited. 3 hours later, Mark said he was heading to the gym. I nodded, then followed him 10 minutes later. I parked 2 blocks down and waited. He never went to the gym. He drove to a residential building I'd never seen before. I watched him park, get out, and walk in. 15 minutes later, Kayla stepped out to meet him in the lobby. They hugged. She let him inside. I didn't need to stay long. I'd seen enough. Still, I waited another hour. When he finally came out, he was wearing a different shirt. That small detail broke me. The audacity. The comfort. The routine. That night, I didn't say a word. He slipped into bed beside me like nothing happened. I stared at the wall, fully awake, listening to the sound of his breathing. Kayla sent me a message at 1 a.m. Love you. Hope you're sleeping well. I didn't reply. Over the next week, they grew careless. Or maybe I was just finally willing to see the truth. Mark took longer showers. Spent more time working late. Kayla's phone was suddenly always on silent when we hung out. One day, she accidentally left her phone on the table while using the bathroom. A message popped up from Mark. I can still taste you. I took a picture and put the phone back exactly how I found it. I left without saying goodbye. She never asked why. I planned the confrontation for a Friday. I didn't want to do it on a weekday, where I'd have to show up to work pretending I wasn't crumbling inside. I waited until he got home from a fake errand. He looked surprised to see me sitting in the living room, dead silent. I asked him if he loved me. He said, "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" That was my green light. I listed the times, the places, the messages. I watched the blood drain from his face. He tried denial first, then blame, then tears.
Said it was a mistake.
Said he didn't know how it started. Said it didn't mean anything. Said it meant everything. He cycled through every excuse I'd read in a Reddit thread, like a man desperate to find one that worked. I asked him how long. He hesitated. 6 months, he said. I nodded. Not because it made sense, but because I'd already guessed that. Maybe even longer. I asked him why.
He said he didn't know.
Said I was distant. Said I was too focused on wedding planning. Said Kayla was just there. Just there. Like a spare tire for emotional flatlines. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him, and for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel love. I felt empty. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left a shell behind. He asked if I wanted to talk to Kayla. I said no. I told him I was done. I wanted him out. Out of the apartment. Out of my life. He packed a bag, asked if we could talk again after the weekend. I didn't answer. He left. Kayla didn't message me for 2 days. Then she sent a paragraph that started with, "I didn't mean for this to happen," and ended with, "I hope one day you can forgive me." I blocked her number. She emailed. I blocked that too. My parents were shocked. They loved Mark. My mom cried when I told her the wedding was off. My dad offered to have a talk with him. I declined. I wasn't interested in vengeance, just peace. Friends took sides. Some stayed quiet. Others reached out privately to say they'd always felt something off. A few admitted they'd seen things, but didn't want to be the one to say anything. That stung more than I expected. Mark tried to call me a few times, left voicemails, sent long messages. Some were angry, some pathetic. One said, "She means nothing." I was just confused. Another said, "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Kayla showed up at my work once. My coworker texted me before she reached my office. I slipped out the back and didn't return that day. A week later, I started therapy again. Real therapy. Not the kind where you go to talk about anxiety and end up pretending everything's fine. I told the full story. Every word of it. My therapist looked at me and said, "You didn't deserve any of that." I cried for the first time in days. I deleted the photos, erased the texts, removed every trace of him from my apartment. The wedding dress went into a donation bin. The guest list, the caterer contracts, the Pinterest board, I deleted it all. I found out through a mutual friend that Mark and Kayla were still seeing each other. That didn't surprise me. It didn't hurt either. Not anymore. It almost made sense. Two liars pretending what they did wasn't horrible. I thought about revenge. I fantasized about posting everything online. Screenshots, names, faces. But I didn't. I didn't want that kind of energy in my life. I didn't want to be defined by what they did. I wanted to move forward, even if it meant limping for a while. I didn't get closure. There was no apology good enough, no explanation that made any of it okay. But I got something else. I got clarity. I got truth. And I got the chance to start over without people who were only ever pretending to love me. The hard part wasn't losing them. It was accepting that they were never really mine to begin with. The silence after they were both gone was louder than anything I'd experienced. No more notifications lighting up my phone. No awkward glances between the two people I trusted most. Just me, alone in a life I no longer recognized. I didn't cry for days. It was like my body refused to process what had happened. I walked around my apartment like a stranger, unsure of what belonged to me anymore. People reached out, but I ignored most of them. The ones who asked, "What happened?" weren't worth the effort. The few who already knew gave me space. I appreciated that more than I could say. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I just wanted the numbness to wear off. Mark texted 3 days after I kicked him out. Just 3 words. "I miss you." I didn't reply. The next day, another message. "Can we talk?" Then a photo of us on vacation, followed by, "I can't believe we threw this away." Still, I said nothing. I deleted the messages but didn't block him. Not yet. I wanted to see how far he'd go to pretend he hadn't shattered me. He showed up at the apartment a week later. Said he forgot a jacket. I handed it to him through the door. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. He asked if I'd had a chance to think. I told him there was nothing left to think about. He tried one last line. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I closed the door. 2 days later, he sent a long message blaming everything on stress, pressure, the fear of marriage. He wrote that he loved me but panicked, that he felt lost, that Kayla wasn't even someone he saw himself with long-term. He begged me not to throw away 6 years. Said people make mistakes. Said I was always the one. I saved the message, not because I believed it, but because I wanted to remember exactly how he lied. With calm words and no accountability. Kayla, on the other hand, never showed up. She wrote once, through an alternate account after I blocked her everywhere. Said she didn't want to ruin anything. That she'd stepped away because she didn't want to make things worse. As if she hadn't already done exactly that. She said she still cared about me. Said she made a mistake. That word again. Mistake. As if cheating is something you accidentally fall into like a pothole. My family tried to rally around me. My mom offered to take me on a trip. My sister sent me funny videos every day for a month. My dad brought over groceries and refused to talk about Mark, which was his way of saying he had my back. It helped. Not because it erased anything, but because it reminded me that not everyone would betray me. I took time off work. Told them I had a personal emergency. They didn't ask questions. I spent my days cleaning out the apartment, getting rid of anything that reminded me of a life that no longer existed. The framed photos, his sweatshirt, the mug Kayla gave us as a housewarming gift. Every object that once meant something was now just noise. The wedding venue reached out about final payments. I told them the event was canceled. They asked if I wanted to reschedule. I said no. They said they'd refund what they could. I didn't care. I would have paid double just to never hear from them again. Some mutual friends reached out to say they were sorry. Others tried to stay neutral. A few asked if I'd consider forgiving him. Those people didn't stay in my life for long. If you're the kind of person who hears he cheated with my best friend and thinks but maybe give him a second chance, then we don't speak the same language. There was one message that did shake me, though. A mutual friend of Mark and Kayla sent me a voice note. She said she knew something months ago, that she saw them holding hands at a bar one night when they said they were at work. Said she didn't tell me because she didn't want to cause drama. Said she thought maybe they were just drunk. I deleted the message without responding. If you see someone drowning, you don't wonder if they're just swimming funny. You help. Or you walk away and admit you were never really a friend. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your perception of everything. You start questioning your memories. Was he always distant and I just never noticed? Did Kayla ever really care about me? Was any of it real? I stopped wearing my engagement ring within hours of finding out. But the indentation on my finger stayed for weeks. I'd run my thumb over it out of habit, only to be reminded of the emptiness. I didn't realize how heavy the silence would feel. No more planning. No more excitement. Just time, endless, stretching, and unforgiving. He texted again 2 weeks after the last message. I broke it off with her. It wasn't right. Can we talk? That was the day I finally blocked him. Kayla didn't reach out again. I heard from someone that she and Mark had been seen together a few times. Maybe they were trying to make it work. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe they were exactly what they deserved, each other. I found an old journal entry from a year before the engagement. I'd written about how happy I was. About how I couldn't wait to marry him. Reading it felt like reading someone else's life. I didn't even recognize the girl who wrote it. She was so sure. So hopeful. I wanted to hug her. Warn her. Tell her that love isn't always enough. People say heartbreak gets easier with time. Maybe that's true. But betrayal? That lingers. That's not just pain, it's erosion. It strips you of trust, of certainty, of parts of yourself you didn't even realize were fragile. I started therapy again. Not to fix what they broke, but to rebuild what I needed. Boundaries.
Strength. Clarity.
I talked about my guilt, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I talked about how stupid I felt for not seeing the signs sooner. My therapist told me to be gentle with myself. That it's not foolish to love someone. It's brave. I wasn't brave when I ended it. I was just exhausted. But in the weeks that followed, I learned that survival is its own kind of courage. Letting go of something that used to mean everything, especially when a part of you still aches for it, isn't weakness. It's strength in its rawest form. Some nights, I still think about him. Not because I miss him, but because I remember what it felt like to believe in someone completely. And then I remember what he did with that trust. And I remind myself that I'll never settle for that kind of love again. Healing didn't come with a breakthrough moment. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet.
Slow.
Some days, it felt like nothing changed, like I was frozen in that same place where everything fell apart. But little things started to shift. I stopped checking my phone expecting to see his name. I walked past our old spots without feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. I started sleeping through the night again, not always, but often enough to feel the difference. I focused on rebuilding my life in pieces. I updated my resume and applied for new jobs, needing something fresh to distract me from the memories tied to everything. I got hired at a small creative agency where no one knew my past. That anonymity was comforting. There were no whispers behind my back, no careful glances, no questions.
I was just me.
Untethered. I moved apartments, too. Different part of the city. Smaller space, less sunlight, but it was mine. I didn't have to walk past reminders of him. I didn't worry about bumping into Kayla in the elevator or checking the mailbox and seeing his handwriting. Every corner of that new place belonged only to me. I stopped avoiding mirrors. For weeks, I couldn't look at myself without seeing someone who'd been fooled. But slowly, I started to see someone who survived. Someone who still got up, still tried, still moved forward even when it felt impossible. I started doing things I'd put off for years. Took a solo trip, joined a book club, went to therapy twice a week, and told the truth every time. Somewhere in that process, the anger started to fade. Not because they deserved peace, but because I did. Anger had kept me alert, sharp, defensive. But it was exhausting. It wore me down. I stopped replaying the betrayal every night. I stopped imagining confrontations in my head. I stopped hoping they'd apologize just right. There was nothing left I needed to hear. One day, I realized I hadn't thought about them in a while. It wasn't dramatic. It was a passing thought. I was in the middle of cleaning, listening to music, and suddenly it hit me. I'd gone hours without remembering what they did. That small realization felt like freedom, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for too long. I began to reconnect with people. Not everyone made it through the fallout, but a few real ones did. They showed up with wine, with patience, with silence when I didn't feel like talking. They didn't push me to move on or to date again. They just let me be, and that was enough. Dating wasn't even on my radar for a long time. I didn't trust myself yet. I worried I'd fall for another mask. But after a year, I dipped a toe back in. Casual. No expectations. Just conversation. I didn't tell them the full story, not right away. It wasn't about hiding it, it just didn't define me anymore. Eventually, I met someone kind. Someone patient. It wasn't fireworks, and that's what made it feel safe. He didn't love bomb me. He didn't rush anything. He asked questions, respected my pace, and never once made me feel small for what I'd been through. He wasn't there to fix me, just to walk beside me while I found my own way. We took things slow. He knew I had walls. Never tried to tear them down, just waited while I learned to trust again. I told him what happened eventually. He didn't flinch. He didn't judge me. He just listened, then held my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. By then, I had already started to forgive myself. For missing the signs. For staying too long. For loving people who didn't deserve it. I stopped thinking of myself as someone who got cheated on. I started thinking of myself as someone who loved deeply and then survived a collapse with her dignity intact. Mark never reached out again. At least, not directly. I heard through a mutual friend that he and Kayla eventually ended. No surprise there. Built on lies, it never stood a chance. I didn't feel satisfaction in that. Just indifference. Their consequences weren't my closure. I never needed their downfall to heal. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever be friends with Kayla again, hypothetically. The answer is no. Not because I'm bitter, but because some lines, once crossed, aren't part of the same map anymore. Trust once shattered like that doesn't rebuild, it dissolves. What she did wasn't a mistake.
It was a choice.
Repeated, deliberate, and selfish. I don't hate her anymore. I just don't care. That's what healing taught me. Indifference is louder than rage. Peace is louder than revenge. Moving on is the quietest, yet most powerful, way of saying, you no longer have access to me. The version of me that began this journey no longer exists. She was softer, maybe more naive, but she was honest. She loved without fear, trusted without proof, and believed people were who they said they were. I mourned her for a while, but now I see her as a stepping stone. She brought me here. Now I know what red flags look like. Not just in others, but in myself, too. I know how to listen to my gut, how to protect my space, how to spot manipulation dressed up as affection. I know love should never come with secrecy or shame. I don't define success by being over it. There are still moments, a song, a smell, a random reminder, that sting a little.
But they don't control me.
They don't spiral me into darkness. They pass. I let them. And in that space, I've built something new. Something small but solid. A life without hidden pain. A love that asks, Nothing I'm not ready to give. A sense of self that doesn't shrink to make room for someone else. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't have the final word. You do. And mine was simple. I choose myself. Every time.